Beep, beep, beep. It's another exciting episode of Zag Talk. I'm joined as always by Greg. Today we also have Sela Musa from Zag joining us, and our special guest, Tom Schreiber, founder and CEO of Perch Mobility, will be joining in the second half of the show. Hey, Greg. Hey, Sela.
Hello.
Hey, Jonah. Welcome to summer.
Welcome to summer indeed. It's always balmy here on the podcast. Why don't we start a little bit of background about our special, another commentator today. Sela, tell us about yourself.
Yes, I'm Sela. So I'm a senior reporter for Zag Daily. I've been working with Zag for the last year and a half, covering lots of different areas of this industry. So shared micromobility, green logistics, the policy developments that are going on in the space. And yeah, really loving it.
Thanks, Sela. But let's get straight into the news. I think exciting piece of research that just came out. Controversial. Does surge pricing hurt drivers? I love getting into the kind of the nerdy econ research here, but interesting new paper. I think this would probably get drivers up in arms like everything else. But it seems like the contention is that surge pricing actually means that the base pricing is lower. And so overall drivers make less money, riders save more money. And so in the kind of economic sense, it increases total welfare. But just the tweets on this one alone, people were up in arms.
Well, I know the standout for me here, if I understand this paper correctly, and definitely encourage all economically minded people to read it, is that it benefits the riders. That part stands out here. And even lower income riders, because they get lower average prices, and it benefits their time because they have shorter wait times, and higher income riders get more reliability, which they want. But my takeaway is that, it strikes at the argument here again that they're not employees. They are contractors who are using this gig work to basically fill in their time. But the findings of the paper show that this basically hurts full-time drivers, especially women, because they're working in the off-peak hours. So this benefits you, or you at least break even as a driver if you are there in the peak with the surge. But for everyone else who's providing that sort of baseline mobility access for riders, they are suffering for it and show that it is not a rising tide lifts all boats, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, it's basically if you're not playing the game to play the game, you're losing. On to more Uber news. I think it's looks like there's a shakeup over at Uber HQ. Longtime company veteran Andrew McDonald is being promoted to COO after the delivery leader Dimitri Gore-Cody is out for 13 years, and CEO Dara K says he's not going anywhere, which is often a thing you say before you go somewhere. So I don't know. Shake up at ride-hailing central?
Well, it's interesting. My take there, I don't know anything about Uber Kremlinology. I can't say there, but it is interesting because the earnings, their Q1 earnings came out a month ago. So there you can see, I think it was interesting that in the discussion and the coverage of it, it was about increasing engagement across the platform, that there's not enough, to Dara's liking, daily use of both the ride-hailing and the delivery functions of this, which I think is interesting. Ride-hailing still the larger share of its business, but in the last earnings, we saw year over year that delivery is growing faster. And also interesting given that University of Michigan research that shows that basically Uber Eats sort of cannibalizes at least part of the ride-hailing business, that the more delivery is becoming a rising share. And we saw the National Association of Restaurants show that huge surge in delivery and takeaway there. So I'm curious, what is the optimal Uber mix at this point? What is Dara and that C-suite trying to figure out in terms of how they want to grow which portions of their business? And then there's the autonomy piece, which I think Sela might know more about.
Yeah, I mean, also not an expert on the shakeup, but yeah, I would just say it's interesting. It definitely feels as though Uber is cementing its presence in autonomous technology and really trying to be one of the first ride-hailing players to get there. We've seen loads of partnerships with autonomous players, and now these leadership appointments with Andrew to support with the AV strategy, and also a leadership appointment to head the autonomous mobility segment. I think just
last
makes
time
it stronger.
Greg and I hosted Uber. I think they're at 14 AV partnerships, and since then they've announced another 2 or 3. So it's just if you got a self-driving something or another, Uber's going to work with you.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're definitely hedging their bets there.
Which they said as much on stage at Curbivore back in April. I mean, they laid that out for you there about how they were approaching all these
Exactly. I wasn't trying to name drop, but yes, exactly.
I'm here for that, Jonah. I got you.
Another European story. So we're obviously going to get you in this, Sela. But so the old antitrust regulators out to play. Delivery Hero and Glovo, which are 2 food delivery super apps, I suppose I should say, just got fined $376 million by the EU Antitrust Commission, basically finding that they had manipulated prices, basically acted like a cartel. And this was facilitated by a kind of funky cross-ownership structure where different holding groups own percentages of each other. So food cartel, I don't know, that's kind of sexy sounding.
Well, in addition, they have apparently, old school Silicon Valley style, like no poaching of each other's employees. My favorite part of the story is like, this is the only time I've ever heard of platform capitalist companies getting raided by antitrust regulators. Like, I'm just picturing vests and carrying out boxes of documents. Who knew that Delivery Hero was such an outlaw in that regard? But yes, who would have thought there could be cartel pricing involved? I mean, this is an entire industry where that worships at Peter Thiel and get yourself a monopoly is the way to make profits there. It'll be interesting to see what will the EU actually do about it, though. Is this going to be another slap on the wrist fine? Will anyone go to jail? I'm very curious to see how this gets resolved.
I will say that the profits are so slim that one, it doesn't seem like they did a great job with a cartel, and two, a third of $1 billion, a little more than that. That's a serious chunk of change for companies that are always touting that they have we're adjusted EBITDA, break even these days. So I think it's more than a slap. Back to America though. This one I think full cult. We'll see if we get yanked off the air for this, Greg. A Florida congressman introducing a bill to rename Washington D.C.'s metro system WMAGA instead of WMATA, which is maybe at least I chuckled for that one. But his alternative proposal is the Trump train, which is a little more knots in my stomach feelings. Greg, are you feeling comfortable north of the border these days?
My takeaway is if that gets them to fund transit in America, that if we have to rename every system of this one, that doesn't require a constitutional amendment, then go ahead and rename it. I mean, just please fund the trains in New York and Washington and elsewhere. But also it just goes to show, I don't know, my main takeaway of this one is all those people who said the internet is not real life, you are wrong. Trolling is everywhere and in everything. And yeah, this is exactly what I would argue their voters want. They want to see fun culture war. They want to see headlines. They want to see renaming. They want to own the libs riding those trains. I can't wait to take the Trump train to Donald J. Trump, International Airport in Washington the next time I'm there. It's only a matter of...
Everything is the internet. The internet is a series of tubes, and what is a series of tubes if not the DC Metro? So, it works.
And they both carry memes, Jonah. They both carry memes now. So
yeah, Sela, can I escape to your country, please?
Yeah, no, I don't think we'll get any names like that here.
So onto money talk a little bit more. We're always on the verge of we're so back, Greg. So Cybernetics Ventures, very 90s name, raising a $100 million fund for robotics and physical AI. This one kind of caught my eye because one, new fundraisers are a little rare these days, but a lot of heavy hitters behind the fund, folks that led iRobot, Kiva, Amazon Robotics, Mass Robotics. So, hardware, it's getting exciting again.
It totally is. I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts overall on this. Obviously, with covering this and automate all the robotics that are out there, but I don't know. It's a fascinating time. Jensen Huang, of course, NVIDIA said this is the year of robots. And I'm on this podcast because I find it interesting that the fusion of retail and industrial landscape and delivery and everything we talk about is being facilitated by the rise of these robotics and the ongoing sort of pushing down the cost curves and capabilities of it. So I don't know, is this the next major player? That I couldn't tell you, but it is a list of heavy hitters in there. And it is fascinating to see this is the hot growth area, further underscoring that all the money is now pouring into robotics, maybe as a sort of post-AI response, or I don't know. I will defer to you and Sela on this one in terms of who the winners will be or how this shakes out. But yeah, I don't think this will be the last deal. I think we're going to see tons more flowing into it.
Yeah. Speaking of money, who just raised $250 million, Greg?
The folks at Joby. I would say Joby Aviation. They are still out there. For you followers of eVTOLs, I have lost track about who's already liquidated. Sorry, pour one out for Lilium. But Joby, they've just, they've, in addition to raising $250 million from Toyota, which of course is still very back in this, they have signed with a distribution partner in Saudi Arabia, which is Abdul Latif Jameel, which is famously, they have had the exclusive license to Toyota in the kingdom since 1955. I would say there's two licenses to print money risk-free in this world. Yeah. One is owning a Coca-Cola bottling plant, and the other one is owning exclusive Toyota distribution rights in Gulf kingdoms. There's other families in the Emirates that do this too. But ALJ is, of course, they're not just your average car distributor. Number one, they're early investors in Rivian, and they've been playing a lot in this space, so it makes a lot of sense they're tied in. Two, what's interesting is that, in describing this deal, how will we deploy these eVTOLs, and how will you service them and maintain them? And so building it out of auto dealerships partnerships and the infrastructure that's in place, like that can make a lot of sense in terms of, at least as an early sort of approach to it. So it'll be very curious about how that ecosystem develops. But like, sure, like a forward-thinking, auto dealership with deep pockets and ties that go back with decades with Toyota, this is a potential win-win-win for them. Certainly makes sense.
I do hope the service bay gets a little bit more training before they're just wrenching on your flying car. But so, what do you know about the market overall out there?
Well, the Middle East is, I think, definitely been a key market for Joby and many eVTOL players. So it's aiming for commercial operations by next year, early next year. So it's come at a good time. And I think overall, the Middle East wants to be, especially the Emirates, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, they want to be these kind of mover markets for eVTOL operations. So I'll be curious to see how it pans out and whether they'll be one of the first to deploy this tech.
Yeah, they certainly seem like they've been willing to kind of create the regulatory environment. I suppose that helps being a soft dictatorship. If you say this is happening, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
But on to news back home, at least home for me. So a couple items. This one, so anyone that's been to Los Angeles knows that the 405 is infamous. I suppose it might be infamous worldwide. That's how bad the traffic is. It's routinely the most traveled, most congested freeway in the country, connecting the valley with the Los Angeles basin. And so for seemingly millennia, there's been plans to build a rail corridor over it. And to me, this is just emblematic of how this country sort of can't build anything anymore. Metro just released updates to its, I think, 6 different alternatives they're studying. And so I think this is a perfect time to play our favorite game on the show, where we try and stump Jeopardy champion Greg here. Corridor is 12 to 15 miles. It's a heavy rail or monorail alternative. Most of them are tunneled, but some of them have aerial variations. So what is the lowest cost option for this? Is it 5.4 billion? Is it 8.7 billion? Is it 15.4 billion? Or is it 244 billion?
All right. Well, this is the deep sigh here of my Jeopardy legacy, always coming back to haunt me every episode. All right, so before I answer here, two framing thoughts on this. One is, I refuse to engage the $244 billion number. I have not looked this up.
Is that the red herring out there? Yeah.
I hope it is. That really not be the answer. But 2 things that jump out of this. One, there was a recent report by New York University's Marin Institute, Eric Goldwyn, and I think Alan Levy there have been writing about high-speed rail and transit costs for years now in New York and beyond. And they just put out a paper where they argued that you could really functionally build high-speed rail, I forget the exact speed there, but true high-speed rail in the Northeast Corridor for effectively, I think, $10 to $12 billion. And then you could bring in private operators, you could make it profitable. So they think that you can do that realistically. So, I'd have to pull up the paper again off the top of my head. Second, for Sela and the ZAG team here, because I know the mothership's in Bristol, I was just reading about, that there was a proposed, I think, 3.3 kilometer line to Portishead, which, that's how I know, of course, where one of my favorite bands comes from. That I forget the cost of it, but I think it had like 1,500 pages of environmental review and took years for them to do. So it's not just America that can't build transit anymore. It's the Brits
it's
are
the whole
keeping
English-speaking world. Yeah,
the Anglosphere. I read an entire essay, by the way, on this one, where really comparing Anglosphere law versus Napoleonic Code, and how the Napoleonic Code countries can get things done that the Anglosphere can't. So perhaps we lost the Napoleonic Wars. This is something to think about.
The French love infrastructure.
All right, but that's enough vamping. I'm going to go. It's going to be high, but it's hopefully not absurdly high. So I'm going to go with 15.4 billion as the low cost estimate.
You ding ding ding. Greg is right on this one. I wish he weren't right. I wish it was one of the lower numbers. 15.4 billion, so more than $1 billion per mile. The high range is 24.4 billion, not 244, but 24.4. But either way, over $1 billion per mile. And again, some of these alternatives are partially aerial. There's not that many stations, although I suppose a lot of the stations are interchanges, which drives up complexity. I feel like this might be one that's happening for my great-great-great-grandkids, if ever at all. America, what happened?
The Anglosphere would happen. Again, we should have lost at Waterloo. That's my takeaway of this week.
Yeah. Somewhere there's got to be a Napoleon descendant that can fix things for us. But some more positive LA transit news. So LAX metro station opening Friday, June 6th. So by the time some people listen to this, might have just opened. Another, decades-long dream here in Los Angeles to connect the airport to the transit network, a crazy thing that, no other city on earth had ever thought about before, obviously. And so, as a transit nerd, I'm excited because it'll be less crappy getting to the airport. But it also, someone can visualize the map. This connects the C and the K line. And so a little bit of dorky, interesting history here. These are 2 metro lines that neither of them actually serve downtown. So it's sort of like a fully polycentric metro system serving a polycentric city. So I think that's a first for the US, where you have two intersecting lines, neither goes downtown. So, the geek in me is excited, and I'll be riding that train even if other Angelinos are still stuck in traffic.
I was to say, is there a rider party? Like I'm picturing Alyssa Walker and a whole crew here that's going to ride that first train. So I would say let's have a party on the train.
Let's have a party on the train. And speaking of parties, a little plug. So on Tuesday, I'll be out in Brooklyn. So anyone that's a transit fan should join us at Threes Brewing for a happy hour mixer, a little fun fest with your fellow transportation, delivery, urban planning geeks. And yeah, how about a little bit of Zag news?
Yes, so in London, there's a lot going on policy-wise. So Transport for London is consulting on increasing the congestion charge by 20%. So that would take it from £15 a day for motorists driving through the congestion charging zone to £18 a day. And if it takes effect, then it will be from next year. Transport for London is saying that if it doesn't take effect, they're expecting more than 2,000 more vehicles on the congestion charging zone every single weekday, which obviously would undermine the purpose of the congestion charging zone to reduce traffic. The consultation closes in August, so we'll know then if it goes ahead. But yeah, I'd be curious to see if 20% increase sounds substantial, but increasing it from £15 to £18 a day, I'd be curious to see if it has a real impact on the number of motorists.
Yeah, it doesn't sound so bad when you say it that way.
Yeah.
It's really interesting in the context of inflation, right, and rising prosperity. As people get wealthier, even nominally in terms of rising wages, they want to drive more. So yeah, the idea that you have to continually increase the charges to keep pace with wage growth and inflation growth to keep that traffic squeeze is really interesting.
Or just to keep up with the tube charges, right? That's another price that goes up every other year.
Yeah, no, and as part of this consultation, I think, they said that they want to make sure that public transport never is disproportionately more expensive than driving. So it's very much in line with inflation. So yeah, and then with that, if it goes ahead, they're also introducing a cleaner vehicle discount. So right now, electric car drivers are exempt from the charge, so they don't pay any of the charge. But as of next year, they will be paying 100% of the charge if the congestion charge price doesn't increase. But if it does, then there'll be a 25% discount for EV car drivers, and a 50% discount for electric commercial cars.
Which is tricky, right? Because this thing, it's got a dual mandate. It's a little bit of congestion charge, but it's also sort of like a clean air environmental charge. So trying to serve two masters there. But, easy for me to say I'm not paying it, so I hope it goes through. Raise those taxes.
Yeah, well, it's difficult, isn't it, to navigate these areas are always very divisive and controversial. People really feel as though their rights are being taken away with ULEZ and congestion charging and low traffic neighborhoods. So yeah. How about in your areas? Is this kind of a similar thing going on?
Well, in New York, obviously has the US's first congestion cordon, which has also been controversial. And obviously the Trump administration's trying to take it away. Here in LA, there's some congestion pricing on certain highways, but it's pretty limited, and I don't think there'll be much more soon, unfortunately. But I don't think Montreal's mooting anything like that, are they, Greg?
No, not yet. I can't imagine how it would play out in Quebec. We've got plenty of fights over bridges.
Yeah, they'll ride over anything. And it looks like I really like this next story that you had. Veo launching a shared dockless e-cargo bike in North America, right?
Yes. So this will be the first dockless shared e-cargo bike in North America. It's quite big news, and their cargo bike will have a capacity of up to 100 pounds without the need to pedal. And they're aiming for a 50% cargo capable fleet by 2030. So yeah, it's a big player making a big move, and I think it touches on the wider conversation of how important is cargo for increasing shared micromobility ridership and really getting people to ditch the car. How essential do you find it?
Yeah, I'm excited about this one because whenever you go to Europe, you see there's these super cool shared cargo bikes everywhere with this big little scoopy basket in the front. And you see every Dutch person with their whole life just, toting around the city. It looks so wonderful. But they've been pretty rare in the US. There's one startup called Cargo Bee doing it in Boston, but they're not dockless. So the fact that Veo is bringing this to North America is exciting. Veo's, their HQ is here in LA, so I'm optimistic I'll see one on the street and I can throw some stuff in it just to try it out.
Yeah.
There's also obviously some equity angles to this, right? I think helps women are going to be more likely to use it because they're more often running errands and doing things that require cargo capacities. I think all good things.
Yeah, no, and on equity and inclusive efforts, we also have Polis, the network of cities and regions, has recognised Zagreb for its efforts of making sustainable transport inclusive and accessible. And it's been a wider conversation for the industry that with these sustainable transport developments, they're all well and good. If they're not accessible and inclusive from the very start, then how good can they be? So Zagreb's really got a forward-thinking approach with things like making transit like physically accessible with low floor buses and trams, but then also offering subsidies for vulnerable users and on-demand transport services for disabled people. So yeah, I think it's a wider conversation to be had about how to integrate equity and make sure these services really are available to all.
Yeah, I mean, what is transportation if it doesn't work for everyone?
Yeah. Exactly. And one of their areas is the gender equality. They looked into the travel patterns between men and women. And, I hear it a lot in the industry that these services like transit lines and buses, they're very much they run from the outskirts of the city to the city centre for the commuter, right? Traditionally for the man. But women use public transport more, complete more journeys, whether they're going to drop their kids off at school or going to look after elderly parents or completing, food shopping, and these services across the world, they're not suited to women. So yeah, it's a really nice case study, I think, of a city that's proactively responding to the findings.
It's nice to see some progress being made.
Yeah, let's hope that these. I mean, this is something that has to be learned over and over again, or it doesn't translate as well. I mean, because exactly these kinds of findings were something that Gabriela Gomez Montt, when she was running the laboratory of the city in CDMX in Mexico City, had similar conclusions on this, on basically figuring out when to stagger bus rides and train times for mothers, and doing the kind of trip chaining to basically pick up children from childcare and things, like figuring out exactly those timings. Yeah, I don't know the current status of that program. Several governments have changed. Former mayors of Mexico City are now presidents and things. But it's interesting to see Zagreb stumbling upon these lessons as well and really implementing those policies. So hopefully we'll see more cities adopt it more quickly through Polis and ITTP and other great works.
Yeah, for sure.
Hope so. And I think that's a great time. Let's kick it over to Tom Schreiber, founder and CEO of Perch Mobility. We're back. Today we're joined by my friend Thomas Schreiber, founder and CEO of Perch Mobility. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Jonah. Good to be here.
It's always fun to catch up with someone that I've been, in this mobility game with for a couple of years, as I suppose we could say about one another. I think you and I have gone back for maybe 5 years or so, and you've been working on something that the whole time I think is really friggin' cool. So why don't you just start by giving people a little bit of background on what Perch is?
Yeah, so Perch is really a kind of vision to create a distributed network for micromobility electrification. And that's doing two things, really. It's creating a more efficient system to charge and support these fleets. And second of all, it's kind of creating a safer way to get batteries out of buildings.
And what, of all the problems you could solve in the world, what brought you around to thinking this is your life's mission?
Oh, I have my youngest daughter to credit for that. So 2018, Bird was just launching in Santa Monica. She was 13 and heard about all the chargers that were, making way too much money for too little work early on, and asked me to sign up. So not too long after, I saw my living room full of Bird scooters, and she was spending way too much money at Sephora, but happy to see her, doing well, but also realized that there was probably a better solution than what I was finding out there for how to charge, right? They didn't belong in my living room. They don't belong in frat houses. Certainly the idea of picking them all up from, city streets and bringing them back to a centralized warehouse in Inglewood didn't make a lot of sense either. So, what was the right way to support those shared fleets? And, as we figured out this model of we tried the containers 2019, we tried some retail pop-up and clearly early on had a winner with the modular shipping containers upcycled for charging. A big wait list during when scooters were taking over the streets of LA in 2019.
Remember those days.
Yeah, and then, unfortunately, it all went away during COVID, and we really took the lessons learned from our MVP products and figured out how to actually plug into the grid on a reliable way and be able to, get these things permitted with building departments and come away with kind of a state-approved, plug-and-play, ready-to-go modular charging container that, fortunately, turns out what's good for scooters is also good for package delivery and e-bikes and a number of kind of use cases. While scooters have had their ups and downs, and I think we're pleased to continue to be working with Lime and the independent contractors who are supporting them. We're also thrilled to be working with some of the other market leaders in meal delivery and package delivery, who are using either cross-docking or decentralized charging for autonomous deliveries, any number of ways these things can be deployed, and having this sort of modular optionality is working out really well towards supporting that mode shift. So,
and just to paint a picture for listeners, so the perch box, the perch pod, I suppose it's shipping container size. It's a vivid, bright purple, which I like the color purple, so you got me there. And inside, what's the magic on the inside to the extent you can share?
So it really kind of, as the products evolved, broken the inside down to kind of meet two different specifications. One is to support vehicle parking. Think of cargo bikes and other kind of delivery vehicles where
LEVs.
they need a place to park safely and securely overnight and perhaps use as cross-docking during the day, but that doesn't have kind of the fire rating and fire safety issues that the lithium-ion batteries present. So then we have what we call kind of a charging class of portals that have the all the fire-rated UL material inside. We've got the blast diffusion vents, and we've got the sprinkler hookups and all the things that are basically taking the requirements for a charging space inside a building and putting that into a shipping container and bringing that out of a building. So the general theme there is we're getting batteries out of buildings, we're going to put it adjacent, we're going to be a much more cost-effective way to get 1 to 4 really safe, secure charging spaces connected adjacent to a building. Rather than try and upcycle at the inside of a building to meet that level of blast and fire control. So that's the sort of direction between having the 1-2 punch between the parking and the charging that enables the real kind of infrastructure to scale out.
And I know fire safety for e-bike batteries, that's been a big concern in New York City. For a while they were talking about banning it from subsidized housing, which would have been a huge problem because a lot of people are using these as means to get to work. Has that really been key to your push into the Big Apple?
So it's actually been fortunately we've been working with one of the large delivery partners that's kind of been the economic driver behind our mission to be out here and expand. But as we're doing that, we think that there's a great opportunity with kind of the solving one can actually kind of create this virtuous cycle where we solve for the other. So we have a number of products that we think can support that. I think it's, an unbelievable amount of kind of bias against the delivery worker that if you drive a car, you're allowed and expected to have a parking place at public housing. If you drive an e-bike, you are, forced into putting that bike between your bed and your exit.
Second-class citizen.
And you don't have a lot of options on where to charge that battery. So, it's one thing to ban it, but if you're not giving a solution on where else to put it, that's not a very effective ban. Don't quote me on it, but I think the statistics will show that every, fatal battery fire that happened in the city over the last year was in a building that had already banned e-bikes, right? And those batteries. So without a real solution coming to market, it's hard to see how just policy alone is going to solve the problem.
I promise I will not quote you on that. No one should ever be quoting this show. How do you go about selecting the sites then? I mean, New York, lots of sites. The rest of the country, even more sites. How do you know where's the right spot for a perch pod?
It depends on the customer who's really looking to develop out that site and what their objectives are. So for a delivery company that's focused on meals versus a delivery company that's focused on boxes, those are really kind of two different use cases, and how they kind of experience the neighborhood will be look different depending on who they are.
And I suppose you find the sites find you. Is it a little bit of a dance both ways?
So I wish the sites would find me. Right now we're it's still early on, and we are actively looking for sites. So we're engaged all the time trying to find great sites around Manhattan in particular. We've got a new customer project coming online where we're actively looking at locations around the greater Phoenix area. So, anybody who's a property owner in either of those markets, we'd love to hear from you and figure out how you can, turn that passive space into some rental income.
That's going to be a very hot box out there in a Phoenix summer.
We do have some climate control to protect that.
So, part of this podcast is about the business behind mobility and delivery. No, obviously, you've been in this for quite a few years now. Do you have any kind of interesting business lessons as the company's evolved?
Well, I think it's been really kind of. I heard the term at an event last week called seed strapped, where you get some money early on, and then you've got to figure out how to make that last. Whether that was the plan all along or that becomes the plan, that's what you're forced into. So I think there's a lot of really good founders and co-founders who we've both met along the way, who are working on that journey, and we just hope that everyone is able to succeed. Ultimately, I think the picks and shovels should do well, and if there's a kind of way to talk about a hardware story or a mobility story that can connect to more autonomy than or AI, those tend to get more interest than talking about a traditional EV charging network, right? I think those have more had their moment and played out.
Have you found it to be particularly challenging to fundraise in the current environment?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, stupid.
Yeah. We're not immune, right? Unfortunately, we do have kind of recurring revenue and assets that can sustain us. So, this is. I knew in 2019 that times were better than the mean, and I know that right now times are worse than the mean for founders. So I think hopefully we'll find a normal soon. I was optimistic. I think there was a good amount of optimism. We might see that in January, but it hasn't quite played out that way.
That's putting it kindly, Tom. What?
You'd be in purple.
I suppose, was it all worth it? I mean, you weren't born and raised a mobility geek. You kind of found yourself in this place. Like, was the journey worth it?
So, I think the journey is far from over.
Of course. Yeah.
And what I'm convinced is that as we can, what Perch is doing is really playing a critical role in unlocking a mode shift at scale. And moving away from a dependency on cars and car economies. And as I think we do that, that's a really good local story and really good for individual households and how they are able to kind of spend their income when that local transportation dollars are staying in the community and multiplying through a few times. So it's worth it to have a bigger thing than you're along working towards. Some people's key driver is safety. Some people's are improving community, and of course all of us have to have a model pencil out for good financial returns too. But for me, this checks all those boxes.
Are there other regulatory levers that you think cities could be pulling that would help you out or be genuinely good for the ecosystem, whether or not it's good for Perch? Obviously, New York's been a leader on fire safety, and you've sort of hired one of the best in the biz to make sure you guys are sort of, I'd say, on the leading edge there. But other things you'd like to see in New York specifically or in other cities across the country?
Well, it's been really exciting to see just the focus on the topic evolve over the last 5-6 years, right? I mean, nobody had any idea why we would need a charging hub or station in 2018 or 2019. It's taken years to kind of get there, and the debate has always been that this is really a private, issue, or it should be a public only solution. And so I've really, depending on the market, seen the spectrum, go to all sides and try to kind of come up with the tool set that can work under, either a private industry-only regime or a local city-run program. and to be agnostic, to that business model. The truth is that both cities and industries can unlock the most value for their communities when they collaborate and work together. So, we have spoken to a number of markets about ways to do that, and hopefully we can, continue to explore those opportunities.
How have you found the actual day in, day out of working with New York City's regulatory environment? Is it opaque? Is it once you figure it out, you can do it? What's its own secret cryptic language?
I have nothing but great things to say about New York and my new home. So I'll
Perfect.
Speaking of opaque, I'll keep it there.
Folks, he's smiling. Well, I should say, I think in a way it's really validated, as you mentioned, the next market you're looking to move into is Phoenix. And hard to think of a city more different than New York. And so I suppose in a way that would alleviate some concerns like, oh, these things are only useful in super dense cities where everything's, every inch is fought over for. But no, it's the infrastructure that you put into the pod, and it's the site spacing, and it's the host partners. And so it doesn't matter what the environment looks like. It's more about, the actual 10 by 10 foot piece of ground that you've picked for it. It doesn't matter what's going on outside, I should say, right?
Yeah, no, and that's the benefit, is that it's frankly just much easier to deploy in Phoenix than it is to figure out how to deploy in Manhattan. So we've been on that search for a couple weeks, and I think our location pipeline looks pretty similar to our Manhattan pipeline after a couple of years. Fortunately, most of America is not Manhattan density.
I know some urbanists listening to the show would be very mad that you said, it's all of America should be Manhattan. I suppose. What do you recall? Just putting way back machine. Like, what did bird juicers get paid when you started this out? Do you remember? What was the crazy rate?
So, hats off to the innovation machine at Bird. Lots of ups and downs and stories printed there. But at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, when they launched their charger program and kicked off this revolution, it was kind of like nothing I've ever seen, where they were paying, basically, it was very easy to find a $12 scooter, right, which meant you had to pick it up, charge it, and redeploy it in the morning. And they would pay you $12 for that trouble. And if anything was in distress, they'd pay you $20. And pretty much starting early afternoon, well into the night, it was just a treasure map of money you could just go pick up and claim. And, until word got out and prices naturally fell, it led to some pretty comical scenes and videos that anybody who looks on YouTube will,
people fighting for that last bird in the wild. No, I remember. I mean, it was, you would see people with like a Mercedes convertible with the back of the car just loaded up with blinking scooters, because that's how you're making your car payment was. Yeah.
Well, that was what was so funny, is everybody was into it, right? I mean, I would talk to the guy from Riverside who was filling up his pickup truck and driving back and forth to Riverside once a day. Clearly, those scooters were not really sustainable. The bartender who was using the bar after closing up to charge scooters downstairs in the bar before anyone noticed, and he would redeploy and then what was interesting to see is you could see on the map who was cheating. And so what I found was there were some spots way up in sort of Billionaire Row in Brentwood. And there they were, piles and piles of scooters, where I want to hope it was the teenage kids and not the parents.
Sure.
But,
sure. Or the caretaker, yeah.
Maybe, right? I'm not sure if that's as good either. But yeah, no, everybody was doing it back then. And then it took about, I think I charged my last scooter the weekend of July 4th, 2018. And by then prices were pretty consistently $8 and under.
Well, thank you to the Bird Bros for coming up with this idea, because we wouldn't be here today. There'd be no perch without that economic incentive, I suppose. Tom, any final parting thoughts, anything you want to share with other mobility entrepreneurs out there?
I think just keep going. Now's the time to figure out how to hang in there and, stay alive, right? And capital will change and capital will become more available. Just figure out how to stretch it out. And I heard that term last week, seed strapping. I think we're all in a similar boat.
Keep fighting the good fight.
Yep.
You heard it here first, folks. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Jonah.